Yo, when you're looking for blank t-shirts or transfers for your business, do you go based on quality or price? Let's talk about it.
Big Safe.
Fat Man Scoop, Brooklyn Clan. What's up, y'all? This is Fat Man Scoop. And right now, you watching the sensei, the number one, the king, my dude, Big Brando. He taught me, personally, me, Fat Man Scoop. All you gotta do is keep your mouth closed and your ears open. Listen to the man talk. That's knowledge personified right there, and I wouldn't trust nobody else but my dude, Big Brando. And I said it. Fat Man Scoop, Big Brando, let's go!
What's happening, everybody? Boy, Big Brando, and today let's talk about choosing blanks and transfers based on quality or price. Now, there's no right or wrong answer for this, but it all comes down to your thought process. Obviously, we always want to look for the cheaper or inexpensive blank or transfer. We're always thinking about price because we want to increase our profit margins. But sometimes that lower price comes with lower quality. But also, just because something is a lot more expensive doesn't make it always better. So I'm asking you guys, when you guys are looking for blank t-shirts, are you going based off of quality or price? What ultimately makes your decision for you? And the same thing goes with transfers. Are you going based off of quality or price? And I'm pretty sure this works for equipment and everything else, but today we're just going to be talking about blank t-shirts or blank garments in general. We could talk about hats, hoodies, jackets, t-shirts, and on the other end, we could talk about transfers. Now, for myself, I like to try to find that middle ground when it comes to blanks and transfers. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys out there are the exact same way like me. You're very price conscious, right? There's certain things that you see the price tag and you're like, you know what? That doesn't fit my budget, or nah, that's a little bit pricey for myself. I need to look for another option. And there's nothing wrong with that. But personally, I never project my budget insecurities on anybody out there. There's always people in my comments when I talk about a blank t-shirt or I talk about transfers, and they're like, nah, those blanks are overpriced, or those transfers are overpriced, or nah, those transfers are too expensive. At the end of the day, what might be expensive to you might not be expensive to the next person. Just because something doesn't fit your budget doesn't mean it won't fit somebody else's budget. So anytime I read those comments of somebody talking about price or something's overpriced or something's too expensive, the first thing I think about is it just doesn't fit your budget, whatever your budget is. But before you start counting somebody else's pockets, just understand what works for myself might not work for you, and what works for you might not work for me. Now, I understand this because I create content built around my business. Everything that I use for my business is what I share with you. And I understand that you might not be a content creator and you might be a content consumer and you're just speaking your mind in the comments, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, understand that that's how those comments are read, is whenever somebody says, nah, that's too expensive, or oh, that's overpriced, or I don't use that because it costs too much. The way I read it is just, it doesn't fit your budget. So before you expose your hand and what your budget is, just understand if it's not for you, it's not for you. Now, with all that being said, like I said, I'm a content creator. I understand this. I understand people watch my channel to understand what's going on in this industry and how I run my business, and maybe they're looking for tips and tricks for their own business. So when it comes down to sourcing blanks or sourcing transfers, I compare all of my transfers, any transfer that I use, to screen printing, traditional screen printing. Because if I wasn't using transfers, that's how I would be getting my t-shirts made. This is what I grew up doing. I grew up screen printing. The first thing I learned was how to screen print before transfers, before vinyl, before anything else. I learned how to screen print. And then I also got stuff done from big shops in mass production, all through screen printing. So I compared my pricing, like if I'm buying transfers, I compare that to what it would cost me to get this t-shirt screen printed. So if I have a certain design in my head and I know it's a 3-color design, I weigh out my options. If I were to get this screen printed, I'd be paying for the 3 screens, the setup fee for those 3 screens. And I'm talking about if this is a spot color job, I'm paying per print and there's a minimum involved. And then on the other hand, when I'm looking at transfers, I'm comparing those prices to screen printing. Now, a lot of people never got anything screen printed. They never screen printed before, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I understand there's a lot of people that got into creating t-shirts just off of vinyl. So a lot of people compare their vinyl prices and their vinyl quality to these transfers now, if that makes any sense. So for myself, the benchmark or the bar that I set is screen printing. Every time I look for a different transfer, I'm comparing the price and quality to traditional screen printing. because I know what it's like to feel a t-shirt that has 6 layers of ink on it. It feels a 6-color spot color job. I know that there was a white underbase and the other 5 colors are layered on top of there. I know what that plastisol ink feels like. I understand how heavy that is on a t-shirt. But more importantly, I understand how expensive that job is. You're paying for 6 screens, the setup fee and all of that good stuff just for that. And then you're paying for the labor of burning the screens and you're paying for the labor of actually printing the t-shirts. That's a time-consuming job. So all of that labor is built into the per piece price. That's what I compare, like say if I'm using somebody like Supacolor. Now I understand how I'm gonna compare the prices, right? What's this 6-color job screen printed gonna cost me? And then what are these Supacolor jobs where it's unlimited colors is gonna cost me? This is where I compare my prices to figure out what fits my budget, right? There's a sweet spot within that budget. There's a cap, and then there's something that you really wanna pay at the very bottom. But I try to find the sweet spot within that middle, because if I wasn't using Supacolor, I'd be getting this screen printed. So I compare my print quality, durability, stretchability to screen printing. And on top of that, turnaround time. What my local shops would charge for a screen print job of that size, and then how fast can this transfer company turn around my transfers for me? So the companies that I use, I test out a lot of companies. I test out companies till this day. I'm always looking at what the price is, how it holds up in the wash, can I lay them down, and how fast they could turn around my job. Because on the other end, I know local screen print shops, I know what their turnaround times are. I know what their minimums are. I know that they could turn around 200, 300 t-shirts in a short span. So I need to make sure that I could get 200, 300 transfers turned around just as quick. So this is what I do when I'm looking for transfers. Quality. For me, quality is print clarity, durability, machine wash, machine dry. Stretchability, not so much, but people like when I stretch out transfers for whatever reason. But I need to make sure that it holds up in the wash. I need to make sure that I'm confident in pressing those transfers down and offering it to a customer, because I know the print quality of a traditional screen printed shirt. Which brings me to, this is why I prefer screen printed transfers. A lot of people out there use DTF, and there's nothing wrong with using DTF transfers. DTF transfers is a full digital transfer. Personally, I like a screen printed transfer. This is also why I use Hot Split from Transfer Express. I understand how heavy a print can be on a t-shirt, specifically single color, white on a black t-shirt, white plastisol ink on a black t-shirt. I know how heavy that could be because I know sometimes it takes a few passes just to get it opaque enough on the t-shirt. So when I feel white plastisol ink on a hot split transfer on a black t-shirt, how soft that feels, how light that feels, and the opacity is exactly like a screen printed t-shirt, easy call. For myself, this is why I go that route. For me, I'm always looking for the lightest feeling transfer on a t-shirt. When it comes to price, I'm looking by the hundreds. Every time I look at a transfer company, I look at what the price break is at 100 pieces. This lets me know, is it comparable to 100 screen printed t-shirts? This is what I compare it to. If you don't compare it to screen printing, it doesn't matter. This is what I compare it to. If you compare it to other transfer companies, if you're comparing it to vinyl or DTG, however else you were getting your t-shirts made, what are your other options out there? If you had to outsource something, compare it to that. For me, I'm comparing it to screen print shops local to my area. What their pricing is, what their turnaround time is, what the price break is at 100 units. So then that way I know if it's worth my while to go with these transfer companies. Now, when it comes to blank t-shirts, everybody has a different preference on what they like out of a blank t-shirt. For myself, I like the collar to be pretty snug, especially around a big neck, because I know if it fits the big neck dudes, it will for sure fit the skinny neck dudes. For myself, I got a fat neck. So when the t-shirt fits me snug around my neck, easy call. Then I look for length, sleeve length, and body length. I hate when my t-shirt is right at my waistline. I feel if I raise my hands or if I bend down, the shirt's riding up. Not a good look for a big guy like myself. So I'm very conscious about that because I know there's a lot of big guys that wear my shirts. And I'm pretty sure they have that same feeling where if they sit down or if they lift their arms and their shirt rides up and their belly's hanging out, that's not the look they're going for. So for myself, body length, sleeve length, something I look for. Which leads me to, this is why I used to use the All Style 1701. That cut fit perfect for the big dudes and for the small dudes. Now that I don't use them no more and now I'm using AS Color. AS Color Classic t-shirt, easy call. Length is cut perfect, sleeve length is good, and it's a softer feeling cotton. But the price tag is a lot more than the All Style t-shirt. And this is what freaks a lot of people out because they're like, oh, no, that's kind of overpriced or that's out of my budget or whatever it is. And that's fine. For myself, it works within my budget for what I'm pricing my t-shirts at. So that's why I use them. But before I even talk about AS Color or All Style or any of that stuff, I tested these t-shirts out from beginning to end. Machine wash, machine dry, pressed a bunch of different transfers on them that I'm planning on using with them. I need to make sure they really hold up and how they react in the wash. I need to make sure that they don't shrink up all crazy and weird, because the AS Color shirts are a side seam t-shirt, and in the past, side seam t-shirts used to shrink up all weird. So far, these AS Color shirts, they hold up. But before I talk about AS Color or All Style or Pro Club, I test these things out because I have a responsibility on this YouTube channel to let you guys know what I'm using for my business. I don't just talk about random t-shirt brands on here that I don't use, because I learned early on, some of you guys take this information and you run with it, and that's cool. That's what it's made for. But some people would hit me up and be like, hey, what hoodie are you wearing right now? And say if I'm just like testing it out. For example, this is a coach's jacket, a windbreaker jacket that I'm testing out. I'm not gonna say, hey, this is this company, because what if I don't like this? And to be honest, this jacket doesn't have a lining. I'm not exactly sure, 100% sure if I really like that. And then also the material's a little weird. So I gotta make sure when I press my transfers on these, I gotta make sure they hold up before I offer it or tell you guys what I'm using. Because what if you guys started using this jacket and then the transfer falls off, or you didn't like the material, and they're like, hey man, I heard Big Brando talking about that. And I'm like, I don't use that jacket. And you're like, yeah, you were wearing it and you talked about it. So before I offer something to the channel, I've gotta make sure that I stand behind it 1000%. I got to put it through its paces. I got to really test these things out to make sure I'm going to offer it to my customers. Because if I wouldn't offer it to my customers, I wouldn't offer it to you guys. So once again, everything mentioned on this channel is what I use for my business. There's no just like random reviews that I'm just talking about different blank t-shirts and different transfer companies and blah, blah, blah. I'm only talking about the stuff that I use because I tested all of this stuff and I stand behind it. Not because somebody's paying me for it, but because I use it for my business. If I can make money with it, you can make money with it. You know what I'm saying? And you don't have to use any of the blanks or the transfers that I use. I'm just providing the information on what works for me, all right? So if you got any questions, make sure you leave it in the comments. I want to know how you guys buy blank t-shirts and transfers. Do you go based on quality first, or do you go based on price first? If your budget is a lot lower than somebody else's, that's nothing to be ashamed about. Your budget's your budget, easy call. If you can only afford certain transfers, or you can only afford certain blank t-shirts, there's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in that whatsoever. But I do want to know, what is the deciding factor? Is it quality or price? Follow me on Instagram, Big Brando TV. Catch you guys on the next one, man. Yeah.